Then a strange fear gripped me and I just couldn't act.
12 moments. That's all it took to end the greatest British guitar band of the 1980s. And not one of them happened on a stage. You know the songs, that jangle, that voice. What you probably don't know is that the Smiths didn't die over ego, or drugs, or a girl. They died over percentages. 12 moments, counting down to the one that made a reunion impossible forever. Number 12, the handshake nobody wrote down.
I want to see people.
The whole tragedy starts with a piece of paper that didn't exist. Manchester, 1983. A rehearsal room above a clothing shop on Portland Street, secured for 4 young men by their first manager, Joe Moss. EMI had already passed on their demo tape, so they kept rehearsing in that upstairs room, working the local gigs, waiting. And then Jeff Travis from Rough Trade got on a train to Manchester to sign them where they stood. Here's the part that decided everything that came after. Morrissey and Marr signed that contract on behalf of the band, and there was no discussion at all about how the earnings would be divided. Sit with that for a second. 4 men, 1 contract, 2 signatures, and no conversation about money. Because at that point, there wasn't any money. There was a rehearsal room, a rejection letter from EMI, and a debut single that came out in May 1983 and never even made the UK singles chart. If you've ever started something with people you trusted, a band, a business, a partnership scrawled out on a napkin, you know how this works. Nobody talks about splitting the money when there's no money. Talking about it feels like an insult, like you don't believe in the thing, so you don't talk about it. You shake hands, you go to work.
Take me out tonight.
And here's what gets me. Every one of them, later, under oath, agreed there had been a partnership. 4 men, 1 band. That part was never in dispute. What was in dispute was what that partnership was actually worth to each of them, and nobody had ever written it down.
Take me out tonight.
Number 11, 40, 40, 10, 10. Somewhere between that handshake and the first real check, the split changed, quietly. Here's how it landed. Morrissey and Marr each took 40% of the Smiths' recording and performance royalties. Joyce and Rourke got 10% each. And that arrangement was verbal. It replaced an earlier understanding that the 4 of them would share equally. Now, you need to separate 2 things here, because most people who argue about this online never do. Songwriting was never the issue. Morrissey wrote the words. Marr wrote the music. Nobody, not Joyce, not Rourke, not their lawyers, ever claimed a penny of the publishing. That was theirs. Everyone agreed. This was about the other money. Records sold, tickets sold, the stuff the 4 of them made in a room together, with a drummer counting them in. And the way Marr has told it since, the money question actually did come up early. There was a disagreement. Joe Moss talked him round. A meeting got called the next day, and by the day after that, everything was back to normal, like nothing had happened. Nobody thought to put any of it in writing, something Marr later said would have been a very good idea. That's it. That's the whole fault line. Not a betrayal in a boardroom, not a signature forged in the dark. just a conversation in a rehearsal room in Manchester that 4 people would eventually remember 4 different ways. And if you've ever been in a room where something important got decided and nobody wrote it down, where everyone walked out believing a slightly different version, you already know how this ends. Memory isn't evidence, not in the room, and definitely not 13 years later, in a court on Chancery Lane.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of 1 coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
Number 9, the bigger it got, the wider the gap. The gap didn't grow because anybody got greedier. It grew because the band got bigger. Watch this happen. This charming man hits number 25 in Britain. What difference does it make? Goes to number 12. The debut album lands at number 2 in early '84. Then, How Soon Is Now arrives and climbs to 24. And in February 1985, Meat is Murder goes all the way, their first number 1 album in the UK. The next year, The Queen is Dead peaks at number 2 and sits on that chart for 22 weeks. You already know what those records did to people. If you were 17 in 1985 and somebody put How Soon Is Now on in a room, you remember the exact room, that tremolo coming out of a speaker like weather. Nobody had heard a guitar do that. But here's what I want you to hold on to. Every single one of those chart positions meant something different depending on which side of that split you were standing on. Same tour bus, same sound check, same photographs where all 4 of them are leaning against the same wall looking like the coolest people alive, and 4 times the money flowing to 2 of them. That's a specific kind of quiet. When the thing you're all doing together is going brilliantly, and you can feel a distance opening up that nobody will name. And the cruelest part? Nobody was lying. Morrissey and Marr genuinely believed the band was their creation. They weren't inventing that to be cruel. And Joyce genuinely believed he was a quarter of a partnership. He wasn't inventing that either. 2 honest beliefs, occupying the same van. Number 8, the postcard on the windscreen, early 1986. And this is the moment the whole hierarchy stopped being invisible. Andy Rourke was fired from the Smiths over his heroin use. And the story that has followed that band for 40 years is that he found out from a note left under the windscreen wiper of his car. A few words telling him he'd left the band, signed off with good luck and goodbye. Rourke maintained across multiple interviews that he received it. Morrissey has denied it, calling it something that got absorbed into Smith's mythology. I'll let you decide which version you believe. I know which way most people lean. But here's what nobody argues about. Rourke was arrested in a drug raid, ended up with a 2-year suspended sentence and a £1,000 fine, and he was back in the band within a fortnight, fired and reinstated in 2 weeks. A man who played on every record they ever made. Whose bass line is doing half the emotional work on songs you've had memorized since you were a teenager? And that's what makes this entry belong in a story about money. Because being removable and being underpaid are the same fact wearing two different coats. If you've ever been the person in the room whose absence would be inconvenient rather than catastrophic, you know exactly what that feels like in your chest. It's not the money, it's the information the money is giving you about where you stand. Andy came back. He played on the last album. He played some of the finest bass lines in British music. And 10 years later, when a barrister in a London courtroom needed a phrase to describe how the rhythm section had been treated, the comparison reached for was a lawnmower and the parts you swap out when they wear. Number 7, The Fifth Smith.
Let me get what I want.
While Andy was out, they hired a replacement, and what happened to him tells you everything.
Let me.
Craig Gannon, 20 years old, already had Aztec camera and the Bluebells behind him. Brought in when Rourke was fired, then moved to rhythm guitar when Rourke came back, becoming the official fifth member. He played on Panic and Ask, which hit number 11 and number 14 in Britain. He toured the UK, Canada, and America with them. 6 studio tracks, and every song on the live album, Rank. And after the tour ended in October 1986, he wasn't in the lineup anymore. 1 British tour, 1 American tour, a top 20 single, and out. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. In 1989, Gannon sued Morrissey and Marr, partly over unpaid wages, partly over how much he'd contributed to the writing.
See the look I've had to make a good man.
It settled out of court for £48,000, but of that figure, $30,000 was the wages he was owed. The remaining $18,000 was legal costs. Read that again. He had to go to court to be paid for work he'd already done, and nearly 40% of what he walked away with went straight to lawyers. That's the part that stays with me, not the amount, the shape of it. That being on the greatest records of the decade and being paid for being on them turned out to be 2 separate negotiations.
It would be the first time.
And this is where I have to say something some of you will push back on, and that's fine. I think this band's money problem was never about anybody being cruel.
Oh, for once in my life, let me.
I think it was about a group of very young men in an industry that had no interest in protecting the people who couldn't protect themselves. Nobody hired a lawyer to sit in that rehearsal room in 1983, and every single thing that followed grew out of that empty chair.
See the life I have had to make it.
Number 6, The Fish Restaurant.
Only slightly less than I used to.
May 1987, and the band is about to end over a job nobody wanted.
Who said I'd lie to her? Oh, who said I'd
Here's what most people get wrong about the split. It wasn't Morrissey versus Marr over music. It was about who was going to run the business. The Smiths had burned through a string of managers, and the weight of handling the band's affairs kept landing on Marr. He put it bluntly years later, he'd never met anyone who thought a major rock group should be run by its 23-year-old guitar player. But when managers got fired, he was the one who had to deal with it. 23 years old, writing the riffs that defined a decade, also doing the admin. The last manager was an American named Ken Friedman. Marr wanted him, Morrissey didn't. And with an American tour coming, somebody had to carry that load, which is what pushed Marr to the point of saying he couldn't do it anymore.
An emergency stop, I smelled the last 10 seconds of life.
So Marr called a band meeting on neutral ground, a fish and chip restaurant in Notting Hill. The greatest band in Britain, sitting down over fish, trying to talk about management structure. It didn't work.
I still love you, only slightly.
Marr left in July 1987. They briefly tried a replacement guitarist, Ivor Perry, from Easter House. And by the time Strange Ways, Here We Come came out that September, the Smiths were finished. An Enemy piece headlined that the band were splitting had run while the album was still being prepared, and Marr believed Morrissey had a hand in it. The album landed on the 28th of September 1987, after the band had already broken up. All four of them have called it their best work, which is its own particular heartbreak. And that's usually where a band's story ends. Four men, one great final record, separate directions. But that's not where this one ends. That's where it starts. Number 5, The Writ. March 1989. The band's been dead for 18 months, and 2 envelopes arrive.
Treat her kindly, though she needs you.
Joyce and Rourke launched legal proceedings against Morrissey and Marr, arguing they'd been equal partners in the Smiths and were each entitled to a 25% share of everything the band made outside of songwriting and publishing.
If you're so clever.
2 claims, 2 men who'd played on every record, and within days, there was only one. Rourke was in debt. He settled almost immediately after the writ was served, a lump sum of £83,000 and 10% of royalties going forward.
Take me, the knife wants to cut me.
And he gave up every further claim he had, £83,000, to walk away permanently from a claim on one of the most valuable catalogues in British music.
And it never really began within my heart.
Here's what I want you to understand about that number. It isn't a story about a man being foolish. It's a story about what debt does to a person's ability to wait.
Your triumphs and your charm.
If you've ever had to take the offer on the table because you couldn't afford the fight that would have got you what you were actually owed, that's not weakness, that's arithmetic. The people who can hold out are the people who can afford to hold out. That's the whole game, and Andy Rourke could not afford to hold out. Mike Joyce could, and did. He carried it alone for 7 more years, all the way to the High Court of Justice in December 1996.
Then why you on your own tonight?
7 years. Think about that. 7 years of your life, aimed at 2 men you used to share a stage with, while everyone you meet still calls you the drummer from the Smiths. Number 4, The High Court.
How can they hear me say those words? Never gone.
December 1996, Chancery Division, a 7-day hearing, and the legal question at the center of it is beautifully, brutally simple.
They don't want to believe her.
Once everyone accepted there had been a partnership between the 4 members, and they did, the law starts from a presumption that partners share equally. Which means the burden doesn't fall on the drummer to prove he was owed a quarter. It falls on Morrissey and Marr to prove he'd agreed to less. Not that it was fair. Not that they were more important. Just can you show us that this man was told and agreed that he was getting 10, and they couldn't produce the evidence that the 40-40-10-10 split had ever been explained to the rhythm section. Everything. The whole catalog, the whole legacy, over £1 million, turned on a conversation in a rehearsal room in 1983, that nobody had written down, and the case turned ugly.
Believe me, and if they don't believe,
Joyce's side told the court that Morrissey and Marr were leaning heavily on how much more important they'd been to the group. At one point, Morrissey held up a copy of the definitive Smith's biography and pointed out that only 2 names were on the cover, before being told by the barrister that he'd be the one asking the questions. That's the image I can't shake. A man in a witness box, holding up a book about his own life, using its cover as evidence. Number 3, 3 words. The verdict. The judge ruled in Joyce's favor and awarded him around £1 million in damages, plus 25% of the relevant royalties from that point forward. That's the headline. That's not what people remember. What people remember is what the judge said about the men in front of him. He described Joyce and Rourke as straightforward and honest. He said Marr was willing to embroider his evidence to the point where he became less credible. And he described Morrissey as devious, truculent, and unreliable where his own interests were concerned. Three words, in a judgment in 1996, and they have followed that man for 30 years. They get quoted in reviews. In obituaries of the band, in arguments online between people who weren't born when the case was heard. Whatever else Morrissey achieves, those 3 words are stapled to the file. Here's what happens next, and this is where the 2 of them permanently separate. Marr paid his share. Morrissey appealed. He argued, among other things, that the judge had been biased against him. He lost that appeal in July 1998. Then he launched another. That one failed too. One man wrote the check and went on with his life. The other one decided the finding itself was the injury and kept fighting it. And honestly, I understand it. Money you can replace. A public description of your character, delivered by a judge, in a case you lost, that's a different wound. You can't pay that off, but you can't appeal your way out of it either. Number 2, the collection. Winning in court and getting paid are 2 different sports. First, the response. Morrissey put a song on his 1997 album Maladjusted called Sorrow Will Come in the End, a bitter answer to the trial. Island Records refused to include it on UK pressings, worried about a libel action. It didn't appear on a British release until the album was reissued in 2009. A song about a court case, removed from an album because of a possible second court case. That's where this band had arrived. Then the money itself. By Morrissey's own account, Joyce received £215,000 each from Marr and Morrissey in 1997. And Marr's final back payment of $260,000 came in 2001. Morrissey's final payment didn't. He said he was overseas and never got the paperwork. Joyce obtained a default judgment, revised his outstanding claim to £688,000, and secured orders to take hold of the singer's income and assets in the UK. Morrissey later estimated the whole business had cost him at least £1.5 million. Read that carefully, because it means something specific. The dispute stopped being about 1983. It became a permanent financial mechanism running through the middle of both men's lives, decade after decade.
It says nothing to me about my life.
Every Smiths reissue, every streaming payment, every anniversary box set. By 2005, it had reached the point where Joyce was auctioning off band rarities online, and Morrissey was responding with public statements listing the payment history. A drummer selling memorabilia, a singer publishing accounts about a band that made 4 perfect albums. If you've ever watched a family fight over an estate and thought none of this is really about the money anymore, you've understood this completely. Number 1, the thing the money bought. This is the bill that never stopped arriving. Andy Rourke died in May 2023, pancreatic cancer. He was 59. After he died, an offer came in from AEG for the Smiths to tour again, an eye-watering amount of money. Morrissey said yes. Marr's answer was public and short. He didn't ignore the offer. He said no. He later explained it partly as principle, partly as the vibe simply not being right. And the drummer, the man who won, Mike Joyce said plainly that he forfeited that with the court case, that he has no skin in the game anymore when it comes to the band's business. He and Marr didn't speak for decades. They finally did at Andy Rourke's memorial. In 2023, Joyce said it wasn't about court cases or who did what. It was about Andy. 34 years. And what finally got 2 of them in a room together was a funeral. And in September 2025, Morrissey announced he wanted to sell off all of his business interests in the Smiths entirely, saying he was burnt out by any and all connections to the other 3. So here's the final accounting. The money got paid, the judgment got enforced, the percentages got corrected, decades late, by a court. And what it cost was the thing itself. 4 men from Manchester who made something no combination of other people could have made, and none of them will ever stand in the same room again, because one of them is gone, and the rest can't get past 1983. That's what the Betrayal actually bought. Not £1 million, a permanent absence.
This town has dragged you down.